we'll see you in the second hour. WINY in Putnam. It's 10 o'clock. AP Network. We're back. Welcome to the second hour of the WINY Talk Show. This is your host, Isham Martin. We have as our guest in the studio today Senator Lowell Weicker. I believe it's still correct to call you Senator, that you deserve that title of respect even after you're out of office? And we'll see you in the second hour. WINY in Putnam. It's 10 o'clock. AP Network. We're back. Welcome to the second hour of the WINY Talk Show. This is your host, Isham Martin. We have as our guest in the studio today Senator Lowell Weicker. I believe it's still correct to call you Senator, that you deserve that title of respect even after you're out of office?
That's right.
Okay. And Senator is joined by also Dave Kayam. Dave is the news director of this radio station. I don't get to see as much of Dave as I would like because he works the afternoon and evening shift. But Dave lined up the Senator's appearance today, and I'm happy to have Dave joining us also. And Senator, we have a very interesting and sophisticated policy on the talk show. We support the big-name candidates that come out and appear on the program. So until Roland and Morrison rode a little further up the road, till I got up around Marcy's garage, where Sam Kaplan's pounder had been pounding away. I've been watching the progress of a well being drilled there in front of Marcy's garage. For about 2 weeks, that old pounder's been going there. And lo and behold, today it looked like it hit something, and flying out of the ground was what looked an awful lot like rice. And I went over and I gathered up that rice, and I found an old sack from McDonald's in the back of the pickup truck and filled it up with rice. So I've got my turkey. I don't have a turkey. I've got a goose, and I've got rice, and Lord knows we've got winter squash. So we're all set for tomorrow. So if I survive the turkey dip, I'll be all set. I'll be back safe and warm in my house with my family, and we'll be having the traditional Canada Goose dinner. I'll never forget, I wish Erwin Newman was with me here this morning to tell the story about the time that he shot the Canada Goose and had only winged it, and it was down and it was in the water. It was somewhere over in Thompson, I believe. He was hunting with a friend from a boat. And he had winged the thing or wounded it and left the boat. It must have been warm enough weather to get in the water, and he swam for the Canada Goose. And the thing fought him, and Erwin said that the Canada Goose almost drowned him. But I've seen Erwin recently, so I know that he won the battle. But so that's what we're having this year. We're having Canada Goose, and we're having rice, and we're having, Lord knows, winter squash. It's the day before Thanksgiving. I will be at the turkey dip tomorrow morning. I rechecked my form from Sean Johnson, and it says that I can turn my money in this afternoon. So if anybody still is inclined to drop a check off at the radio station made out to MDA. MDA, my name doesn't even need to appear on the check anywhere. A contribution, however small, would be appreciated, made out to the Muscular Dystrophy Association, and I'll turn it in with the rest of my money yesterday. Don St. Ange will be there. Don's probably still got his form down there at the town hall, and if you want to pledge Don, we drummed up some money for him yesterday. He wasn't doing very well, and I could tell that his pride was really hurt that I had brought in more money than him, and even was getting contributions from Putnam Democrats, which he resented a Woodstock Republican getting the contributions from what he considers to be his people. So I was willing to share some of my pledges with Donald, and I think he's feeling pretty good about himself this morning now that when he turns in his pledge list to the KFC, he needn't be embarrassed. On a serious note, this Thanksgiving, we actually have something to be thankful for that I think is the most incredible event that has happened in my lifetime. And you know, it's amazing how we get so preoccupied with our own lives and our own problems, just getting from day to day and dealing with raising families, or dealing with our infirmities and the busyness of life in America in the 20th century, that sometimes we can lose sight of the blessings that we have. And I don't mean to judge anybody else. I'm speaking for myself, really. But something incredible happened in the history of humankind this year, when the Cold War, as we have known it for all of my lifetime, really, all of my conscious lifetime, has been during the Cold War, during a time when the United States and its allies in Western Europe and other parts of the world had been locked in a struggle with communism against the Soviet Union and Communist China and their allies in Asia and Eastern Europe. Mainly a struggle between the United States and the forces of freedom and the forces of capitalism, democracy, against the forces of communism and godlessness. And this year, in 1990, we will remember that this was the year that the Cold War as we know it ended. Not all of the danger is past, and there continues to be danger in the world. The situation in Iraq demonstrates that there will always be conflict, that there always will be ideologies and people and leaders and regimes that will be unable to get along with other people and leaders and regimes and governments, and that this is the nature of man to group and to take sides and to quarrel and to be territorial, and it's too much to hope that the nature of mankind will change and that these things will pass. But the most dangerous episode, really, in modern civilization may have passed with the end of the Cold War. I grew up, I'm 41 years old, maybe 42, I'm not sure. I was born in 1949 and grew up, my first years that I can remember in school were in Texas. I can't remember crawling under the desks for the bomb shelters growing up in Texas, but I can remember in Yardley, Pennsylvania, and Medfield, Massachusetts, and then in 7th grade in Warwick, New York, the bomb drills. Can you remember what we called them? They weren't air raid drills. They were some kind of a drill, like a fire drill, only they were for when the atomic bomb had been dropped on us kids. And we actually crawled under our little Formica and tube steel classroom desks. Somebody had ascertained that we were going to be safer from the atomic blast under our school desks. We'd queue up. I can't remember what we were doing, but we'd queue up and we'd parade out in the hall, and remember if we stood in doorways in a doorway that we were safer, but I remember crawling under the desks. I wonder what the grown-ups thought of having us kids. I wonder whether there were those that thought that they were frightening us unnecessarily, and that it wasn't worth it to frighten us for the safety that crawling under our school desk would afford us in the event of a real atomic bomb dropping on our school. And then I remember with my parents visiting friends who had built a bomb shelter in their basement of their home. There are some around here in northeastern Connecticut. I know that there are some private homes where people actually in the late 50s or early 60s actually built bomb shelters in their homes. And they put food in them. They put dehydrated food and other tinned food and water and special containers. And I remember the one that I visited in Medfield, Massachusetts, just around the corner from where I was living with my family. I was in about 6th or 7th grade. And I remember the people explaining to my father that fallout couldn't turn corners. And so they built a hallway, like a corridor, that jigged and jogged to get into this fallout shelter. And the idea of all the turns getting into it was that this radiation couldn't turn corners. So we thought that we were pretty smart, that we knew something about radiation that most people didn't, that it didn't turn corners. And all the towns had, and still have, civil defense directors, and had civil defense plans that were mainly had grown out of this idea that there could be nuclear war, and that the government had to help the individual towns make preparations for nuclear war. And all of the towns stored up dehydrated biscuits in tins. There were these little biscuits that were nutritionally correct, that would sustain life with these little biscuits combined with water, that you could survive. And we stored, garage fulls and basement fulls of these biscuits in these water containers in order to sustain life in the event of the nuclear holocaust. And then last night I saw on television, on Channel 4, on the NBC Nightly News, an aide to Mr. Edvard Shevardnadze of the Soviet Union. And they were talking about the war in Iraq, the potential for war in Iraq, and the efforts of President Bush to enlist the Soviet Union on the side of the United Nations resolution that would commit us to using force against Iraq under certain circumstances. And it was amazing to see how open and frank and honest this man was. He spoke English well, so he communicated clearly to me. To see how open and honest he was in describing the situation in the Soviet Union. And he talked about the war in Afghanistan, and what a mistake that had been, and how the memory of Afghanistan was still so strong in the minds of the Soviet people, and why this was an impediment to them getting involved in another war in Iraq. And the news in that same hour covered the situation with the trouble that the central government in the Soviet Union is having with the various republics, and the terrible economic problems in the Soviet Union. Apparently, Boris Yeltsin, who leads the Russian Federation, is the main political challenger to the power of Mikhail Gorbachev. That they are talking in the Russian Federation of actually forming their own army in the Russian part of the Soviet Union. And all the different republics in the Soviet Union are wanting independence and are vying with the Soviet Union central government for power. And there are food shortages, and they showed the empty stores and the rationing, and openly reporting with taped footage from the Soviet Union of the trouble in their economy, and interviewing people about the trouble in the domestic economy in the Soviet Union. It's just unbelievable to me that they are so free in showing all of this today, and that their people are able to make a political statement and to challenge their government, and not be sent to Siberia for their actions. So what I'm getting around to is that, yes, there still are dangers in the world, and we need to continue to be vigilant as people, and sometimes at sacrifice to us individually and as a nation. But a great thing has happened in 1990 that I think tomorrow I will give thanks for. The end of the Cold War as we know it. A whole generation grew up believing that they could be at any time annihilated by a nuclear bomb. And today we don't still have that fear. Children growing up today need not be conditioned by crawling under school desks with the idea that their lives are in danger every day because of nuclear war. Isham Martin on the WINY talk show. We have an open forum today. Thanksgiving's the theme. Would appreciate any calls on Thanksgiving from new callers, first-time callers, or you regulars. We'll be right back. We have lines open at 928-2721. If you're calling from the Plainfield area, the number is 774-5161. Good morning. You're on the air.
Good morning.
Hi.
Isn't it ironic that Russia, by her actions, caused the United States to airlift food to Poland and West Germany? And now we are thinking about airlifting food to Russia today.
Well, I think that's the nature of the American people. Don't you think we're capable of forgiveness? And does that bother you?
No. But
No.
I mean, it's ironic.
It is ironic.
Yeah,
It is ironic. Isn't it amazing to see how openly the Russians are allowing the reporting of their internal domestic problems?
Well, yeah, I know. I agree with you there. But the world has shrunk now.
Yeah.
Through all this mass media, it's hard to hide anything.
Yeah. What are you doing for Thanksgiving?
Well, I'm going to have a turkey dinner.
You're going to have a turkey dinner?
Yeah.
Having any family in?
No.
No?
Just my son. That's all.
Just your son? Yeah.
My wife passed away 7 years ago.
Yep. Watching a ball game?
Oh, yeah, I watch football.
Yeah, probably fall asleep on the couch.
Oh, really?
I will.
Yeah.
If there's no room on the couch, I'll be on the rug. I'll be asleep on the rug. Probably drool on the rug. But I wish you a good Thanksgiving.
Same to you.
Okay, thanks for joining me.
Bye.
Isham Martin on the WINY talk show. I'd like to hear your thoughts about Thanksgiving. What are you grateful for today? Not today, tomorrow. I'll be grateful just surviving that turkey dip. By the way, has anybody ever really eaten any of these Canada geese? What I always wondered about these Canada geese that we're seeing so much of on the local ponds today, they all look alike, don't they? And I would assume that the young ones would be better eating than the old ones. But the trouble is they all look alike. So if you were going to shoot a Canada goose to eat, how do you know which one to shoot to get the most tasty one? They all look alike. Are there any experienced hunters out there that can tell me? Or maybe you're not even supposed to shoot them. It looks to me like they're plentiful. Are you allowed to shoot these Canada geese? And is there a season for them? There's a spot on 169 between Woodstock and Pomfret, actually in Pomfret, where that has become one of the main tourist attractions in northeastern Connecticut. I'm waiting for one of the brochures printed by the visitors district to start advertising the scenic overlook of the Canada geese on 169 in Pomfret, because you ride by there, and this time of year there's lots of cars, and some of them from out of state. People pulled over looking at the huge flock of Canada geese right there. Let's take some more phone calls. Good morning.
Yeah, good morning, Isham.
Hi.
Yes, I was listening to what you said about the danger of a Holocaust being lessened. That's true, but I mean, I don't think man has progressed too far when they're destroying themselves with the way they're living.
Mm-hmm.
You know, debauchery. They're all they don't learn. You have the option whether to try to live as decent as you can, or to go the way that other people think it's the way to live, and they're only destroying themselves. They have nobody to blame.
Well,
you know the people in the communist country, they had no say in building up militarily,
right,
until they get to the point where now they're really in dire straits. They have haven't got the food, things of that side. But when people deliberately know that if they use drugs or if they do other things, that they might end up dying.
Yeah.
And they just don't.
But
Incidentally, yesterday.
But the people isn't it at least better to have averted some of the dangers that could kill us and that could kill innocent children through no fault of their own? At least with some of the evils that you speak of, at least we have free will. And we have a choice.
Right.
It's like the difference between being killed in a car accident where you're driving and being killed in an airplane where the plane goes down and you have no control over it. It's a matter of chance. I'd rather take my chances in the car where I've got some control over whether I live or die.
I understand that, but the point of it is people aren't making those decisions. They don't seem to care. As long as it... I had a long chat with that lady that was upset about what I had said.
Did you speak to her?
Oh, yes. I
good.
spoke to her for an hour and a half, and some person that's supposed to be her friend, and I don't call that a friend, called her up and gave her the wrong information.
Mm-hmm.
She said that I said the boy didn't believe in God. I didn't say that. I said that he was blaming God, and do you want to know? They hadn't put the poem in its entirety in the paper. So how could I know that towards the end he had mentioned God? It wasn't there.
Yeah.
And I'm sorry for the lady.
Well,
Sorry.
I think we take a real chance when we make any judgments about other people that we don't know and in whose shoes we haven't walked, and we need to be careful about that. You know what? I'm going to need to move along, but I wish you a very happy Thanksgiving.
Yes, same to you.
I hope you'll have a wonderful day, you and your husband.
Thank you very much.
Good morning. You're on the air.
Hi.
Hi.
I'd like to get back to the Canadian geese.
Yeah.
I would never eat one for Thanksgiving or any time because I know they mate for life.
Uh-huh.
They're very...
You mean they have monogamous relationships?
Yes, they do. I read a wonderful article about them, how the mother and father raise their young, and how the older young will help to raise the next...
Speak a little louder, all right?
Yeah, then the sons and the daughters of these geese, the older ones, will help their parents raise the next family and how they migrate together. And at the end of the article, they said human beings could learn a lot about relationships by studying Canadian geese. And there's going to be a broken-hearted goose tomorrow, when it's made a shot for somebody's Thanksgiving dinner. And I'm a vegetarian myself, and I have 2 pet turkeys.
What about the one I found frozen in the pond this morning that I took for my dinner?
Well, was he alive?
I'm only teasing.
I mean,
I was having fun.
Oh.
But no, of course not. Some mornings you see them on the ponds, and the ice, there is ice all skim of ice all frozen around them, and they're sitting perfectly still. You see this with ducks too, and they look like they're frozen in the ice, and of course they aren't.
Right.
But
I think they're just beautiful. I would never kill one.
Yeah, you know the spot I'm talking about in Pomfret?
No, I live on Alexander's Lake, though, and we have the honor of having them visit us every year.
Well, never mind the geese. There's going to be a lot of turkeys in the water tomorrow morning.
Oh, I know. We hear you every year.
Don't shoot those turkeys either, all right?
Nope.
If you're a vegetarian, you have to be consistent.
Oh, I am.
Because there's going to be all varieties there tomorrow. There's going to be big fat ones and little skinny ones and Republican turkeys and Democrat turkeys and all kinds. So, lock the gun cabinet.
I will.
Thank you for joining me.
You're welcome.
Thanks for that information about the geese.
All right.
Bye-bye. Good morning.
Good morning, Isham. Sean Johnston calling.
Yeah, Sean.
How are you?
Did you hear I don't know if you had your radio on just now. I'm warning people not to take a pop shot at any of the turkeys in the morning.
I listened to you yesterday for a little while when you were speaking with Mayor St. Ange.
Yeah.
And I wanted to clear up a point.
Right.
He made it seem kind of underhanded how I talked him into this.
Yeah.
Which is not the case. In case, Donald, you're listening, that's not the case. I asked him.
And I saw him again yesterday afternoon in his office. He was with Willie Busquet, and in front of Willie Busquet, he repeated the same thing, that it was underhanded, and that he and that he had been tricked into this.
No, absolutely not. He agreed to. And then, being the kind soul I am, I publicly let everyone know to save him all sorts of phone calls. I saved him from calling everyone asking for money. I told people over the air he was going swimming, that he was going to be asking for pledges.
Yeah.
So I thought I was doing him a favor.
Well, I'll tell you something. I don't see how this man will ever be reelected mayor of Putnam. If you could see his pathetic pledge list.
Really?
And I got most of his pledges for him here.
$50 for him yesterday.
Well, I got more than that. Some you don't even know about.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So don't let him. When he comes in tonight with his money, don't let him be too puffed up with pride, because we hammered this thing here for him yesterday morning, and we got most of the money for him.
All right, that's great. And a couple of points yesterday that you had mentioned. It's the 6th year that we're running it as a fundraiser for muscular dystrophy. It's the 14th year overall that we've had the turkey dip, but this is the 6th year.
6th year for muscular dystrophy.
Right.
And I've still been inviting people to come and just watch. Is that all right?
Absolutely. That's great. I'd also like to mention that Craig Gates, the owner of J.D. Cooper's, is going to be opening up the sports bar side, Cooper's Stadium, after the swim tomorrow.
Yep.
Kind of like an open house.
Mm-hmm.
And he's going to put on a delicious breakfast buffet for all the swimmers.
Mm-hmm.
So anyone after the swim wants a nice, warm, hearty breakfast, out of his generosity, he's going to be opening up and providing that for everyone.
Good. Good.
And one other thing, last night on the Channel 3 News, we had Hilton Catterley putting in a plug for us, asking for good weather for us for tomorrow, and it looks like it's going to be pretty seasonably warm.
Yeah, what do we, how about water temperature?
I don't think that's going to vary. I think that'll probably be in the high 30s. It's usually between 36, 38, so...
and you got the rescue vehicle lined up?
We've got Billy Highland and Mr. Weaver down at the Dayville Fire and Rescue are all set. They'll be down there this afternoon roping off an area for the ambulance, and they've got two boats that they put into the boat launch area.
You know what I'm worried about, if you listen to me at all. I'm worried about going down and not being spotted. Do you have any spotters on the shore?
Wow, we've got the boats right out in the middle.
Oh, you've got boats.
What's that?
You've got boats out there.
We've got 2 boats with rescue divers in each boat. They're right there and they're ready.
Mm-hmm.
There's 4 people out in the boats, and 2 of them are divers. So the only problem would be if you went down, is someone would have to dive down and pull downward off your ankles, I think.
Yeah, see, he's got 2 sheets. He's got 2 forms. He's got the form that's got about 4 names on it that are people that are pledging him.
Uh-huh.
You know, like probably mostly secretaries and people working for him. You know. And then he's got about 3 pages stapled together that are the people that paying him to hold me under.
Uh-huh. Well, maybe if we started a sheet to hold him under, Mr. Hutchins would be glad to pledge some money.
The donut man. Okay, thank you.
I'll see you tonight, and if not tonight, I'll see you bright and early tomorrow morning.
I turned all my cash into checks.
Okay.
All right, we'll see you.
Tomorrow morning.
Thanks for calling, Sean.
Sean Johnson working so hard on the turkey dip for muscular dystrophy. And this is Isham Martin on the WINY Talk Show. We'll get right back to you. Isham Martin on the WINY Talk Show. We've got time to get in some of your calls this morning. Give us a call on anything that you've got on your mind. It's essentially an open forum, but particularly we'd like to hear what you know about the Canada geese. And what are you thankful for on this Thanksgiving? I'm particularly thankful that old Berlin Wall went down this year, and that the Cold War, as we have known it for all of my lifetime that I can remember, that Cold War seems to be over. There are still dangers in the world, but that was the biggest one that was on people's minds, and it looks like it's over, and we thank God for that. Give us a call here at 928-2721. That's 928-2721. If you're calling from Plainfield, 774-5161. Now let's check Bob Harris's forecast, brought to you by Safeway Petroleum.
Good morning, everybody.
And it's 42 degrees in Putnam by the Cargill Falls on this Wednesday of Thanksgiving week in 1990. If you've been trying to get in on the phones here, the phones have been tied up. Keep trying. The number here is 928-2721. 928-2721. If you're having difficulty on that line, 774-5161. Isham Martin on the WINY Talk Show. We'll be right back.
Connecticut Farm and Pet Center cordially invites
We're back on the WINY Talk Show. We've got 10 minutes of the program left in the first hour on a Wednesday before Thanksgiving in 1990. What are you thankful for this Thanksgiving? One of the things that I was also thinking about on this subject is, I was reading a lot of children's poetry and other literature on the subject of Thanksgiving, looking for something interesting to read today. And all of this literature that was from the earlier days of our nation's history on the Thanksgiving theme, all is about the provision of food and shelter and getting out of the weather and being snug and warm and having food and thanking God for the provision of food and for the harvest and all of these very, very basic aspects of being alive and of survival and of provision of faith in God and a belief that God would provide sustenance for us and to not be looking too far ahead, but just enjoying the fact that on this day that we're alive and well and healthy and have a meal to eat. And it's really a very different world that we live in now. Yes, we are in a recession in Connecticut and New England and in many parts of the country. Yes, the situation could even worsen. And yet for most of us, it's very difficult to comprehend even the possibility of not having food. There are poor people living among us for whom food and shelter is still an issue, but for the great majority of us, though many of us are deep in debt, for most of us, we don't really consider the possibility that we would not have a full belly on Thanksgiving Day, or for that matter, any of the rest of the year. And I got thinking about what do we lose? What do we lose of the experience of being alive when we have only abundance in our lives? Does abundance have meaning if we have never known poverty? When I think back on my short life, the things that, many of the things that are most precious to me, the memories that are most precious to me, are of the struggle of working hard to finish a job and to have the customer come and pay me for the job that I've done, and to be able to run off and buy food or pay the light bill before the electric company turns the lights off or the phone company turns the phone off. That struggle is precious to me, and I suspect many of you listening have had the same experience, that if you look back over your life, that it's a lot of the hard times and the struggle that you somehow got through, together with the support of a spouse usually, or a whole family pulling together to get through a difficult time, that those are some of the things that are most precious to you. And I wonder, it becomes a broader subject for discussion and something that some of you may wish to talk about in the second hour. But as far as raising our children today in an era where there is prosperity and where there is abundance, and where the issue is not whether we will eat, but the issue is, do we buy the pair of sneakers that cost $40, or do we relent and buy the pair of sneakers that are $75? Or do we make the kids buy the discontinued model, or the soiled ones that maybe only cost $29.95? Do we let them buy yet another Nintendo game? These are a lot of the issues where parents are drawing the line today about what they will provide for their children and what they will not. Not whether we will eat, not whether the child will need to leave school to go out and work to bring in money to help support a family, not whether the kids will work into the dark bringing in firewood. I don't think anybody's out walking the tracks in northeastern Connecticut, picking up coal dropped along the railroad tracks. So perhaps in the second hour there are some of you who have recollections from your own childhood or from your young adulthood in an earlier era. Perhaps there are those who lived through the Great Depression period in our history in the from about 1929 up until World War II, during which time there was a sustained period of a lousy economy and where people were out of work and there wasn't much to go around. Be interested in hearing from people of that generation about what they remember about Thanksgiving or just the holidays generally during those years. This is Isham Martin on the WINY Talk Show. We have open lines. The number here is 928-2721. Please join us. We're back on the WINY Talk Show. We've got about 4 minutes of the program left in this hour, and we can talk about anything that you've got on your mind. We may be having some school kids coming in later. We had fun the other day with reading the Alex Haley essay about Thanksgiving and Alex Haley's own life and his own experience where during World War II aboard a ship he was moved on Thanksgiving to write to people that had been important to him in his life, and he realized that perhaps too late to communicate with some of them. Half of the people that he was able to list that had been important in his life were already dead. But he took pen in hand and he wrote to his old school principal, a retired minister who was living, and he wrote to his dad, and he wrote to his grandmother, and something to think about. I've been trying to stimulate these past few days some thoughts about our own lives and what are we thankful for. The mere provision of food no longer for most of us is an issue, and in this day and age many of the things that we're thankful for are more abstract, if in fact unless they are other material things. But for me, many of the things that I'm thankful for are abstract. I've been thinking this morning about the end of the Cold War as we know it, the end of the long struggle with the Soviet Union for world domination, that seems to be very much over. I was thinking, however, last night, speaking with my wife about this subject, they've still got all of those nuclear warheads. And I suppose that in many ways this is until things sort of shake out, that this is also an unsafe time, because when a regime is unstable and when there is a struggle for power, you have to wonder how well the chain of command and the lines of communication and the whole administration of the military, how well that is holding together in a time when loyalties begin to break down. But it is fascinating that all of the different Russian republics now are asking for freedom and for independence and for a stronger voice in their affairs. A fascinating time in the history of mankind. And in 1990, on Thanksgiving, we will remember this year as the year that the Berlin Wall came down and Bloomingdale's was selling small pieces of what purported to be parts of the Berlin Wall. And we will remember the scene of East Germans and West Germans with bottles of wine held aloft, standing on the tops of the Berlin Wall at different locations, celebrating, dancing the end of a long period in their history where Germans were separated from friends and family members by an artificial demarcation put up by politics. Isham Martin, your host on the WINY Talk Show. We'll have an open forum for the whole second hour today. We welcome your calls. We encourage you to participate. It's 10 o'clock.
Political party's only there for one reason, and the only reason you only need two is that they're a vehicle for the people to express their democracy, if you will, all right? And that's what the job is, to do, is to allow the people to participate. Now, unless you get the people to participate, unless everybody understands that we are in a political society, so they are politicians, whether they like it or not. They just choose to participate or not to participate, you see.
I've got to run right now.
Okay.
I thank you for your call.
All right, sir.
Join us again. All right, I'm interested in your thoughts.
All right, thank you. Bye-bye.
Isham Martin on the talk show. We'll be right back.
To protect you.
Isham Martin back. I'm afraid we have only about a minute and a half before the news. Good morning.
Good morning, Aisha. How are you?
I'm good, thank you.
This is George Robertson. I'm from Belleville.
Yes, sir.
My son Matthew is over in Saudi Arabia.
Beautiful.
And I'd like to know if anybody would like to write to him. He went to Ellis Tech.
Okay.
And he was in the electrical shop. And
what's his name?
Matthew Roberts.
Matthew Roberts.
Yeah. And I'll give you the address.
Okay.
His social security number is 040
76 3759.
And under that it's A 2/7
2/7
INF infantry.
INF infantry, yeah.
Under that is 24 ID.
I what?
D as in Della.
Della, dog. Right, okay. 24 ID.
Operation Desert Shield.
Yeah.
APO New York 09315.
09 what?
315. That's it.
Okay.
These people, you know, it's a nice feeling to get mail, but when you're a serviceman or woman over in Saudi Arabia or anywhere else, as a matter of fact, and mail call goes and you don't receive a letter, it's a very lonely feeling.
I understand. Thank you, and God bless him, and give him our best, all right?
Will do.
Thank you for calling. We'll get his name out.
Thanks. Bye-bye.
Isham Martin on the talk show. Join us in the second hour. We'll have more talk about local politics. It's 10 o'clock. Up to Thanksgiving so that I can represent the station well with a gobble. We're here talking about the turkey dip for the benefit of the Muscular Dystrophy Association, sponsored by the Knights of Columbus from Putnam. What is the council? What is the local?
Cargo Council number 64, right?
The Cargo Council. And you've got an active organization right here?
We have our building is right on Providence Street. Large blue building for the gas station by the ball field. We've been there about 15 years. Cargo.
Is this one of your principal fundraising things that the KFC does, or are they involved with other things also?
We're involved in a lot of other endeavors, Isham. This is probably our largest dollar-wise fundraiser that we do for any one organization. The Knights of Columbus worldwide are very involved with the mentally handicapped. Each council every year will run a Tootsie Roll drive. You've probably seen us at the Woodstock Fair with our Tootsie Roll costume. At Christmas time, the Knights of Columbus locally, we have members make donations and we give out food baskets to the needy. We're involved in a local scholarship for a Putnam High School student each year. We give out a $1,000 scholarship. There's many, many areas that we're involved in. And this is just one that has really happened to have gotten the limelight and really taken off. And grown into some large numbers and dollar figures.
Sean Johnston is with us, along with Mike Pesci, members of the Cargo Council of the Knights of Columbus, along with Dan Marquis from the district of the Muscular Dystrophy Association, covering most of the state of Connecticut, talking about the fundraiser that they're doing for the 6th year this year, the Turkey Dip at Alexander's Lake. They invite you to come and watch. They actually go into the water at 8 o'clock in the morning.
We go in right after the 8 o'clock, WINY 8 o'clock news.
Right after the 8 o'clock news on WINY. And they invite you to get onto the North Shore Road there at the, get off the highway at the Attawagan-Louisville exit on 395. Go west, cross the railroad tracks. Immediately after the railroad tracks is it after the railroad tracks or is it after Lake Road?
It's after the railroad tracks, after Lake Road.
After Lake Road. Then the next left heads down toward many of the cottages on Alexander's Lake, and you'll see signs then.
You'll see signs right from the exit off of 395.
Okay, we'll be back with these guys after this. Back, Isham Martin on the WINY talk show with Sean Johnston, Mike Pesci, and Dan Marquis, all talking about the muscular dystrophy benefit coming up on Thanksgiving morning, the traditional Thanksgiving morning turkey dip at Alexander's Lake. It's moved now to its 3rd location. Keep needing broader beaches and better access for the growing number of swimmers and spectators coming to be in the turkey dip and participate in the turkey dip. If you're interested in swimming, Mike has said that you can phone the Knights of Columbus Hall in the afternoon and early evening at 928-0064, 928-0064, and you can leave your name there, and somebody will get the sheets, the literature to you, so that you can begin to take pledges and money. Also, you can call Mike at 928-6012 at his home, just in the evening, Mike?
In the evening, yes.
In the evening?
In the evening.
If you're interested in getting a pledge sheet. They still would like to have more